Whose idea was it for the guns? And did OJ know about the guns going in?
So right now, we're just going to base that opinion or that thought process on the two guys who had the guns, who specifically will tell you OJ asked them to bring guns.
OJ Simpson avoided prison time and conviction for the murders in Los Angeles. That was not the case in Las Vegas. His luck ran out, and the primary reason is the man sitting across from me in the studio today, next to my co-host Kato. I'm Tom Zenner. Welcome to 1 Degree of Scandalous. Welcome Andy Caldwell, the pivotal man for the Las Vegas Police Department, a detective at the time. Evening should have been a mundane, slow, maybe even hopefully boring night for you. Tell us how it started.
Yeah, so it started, my partner and I were just kind of a slow time in Vegas for robberies, and I can't tell you why. So we just went out. We were going to help patrol, just get a regular street robbery, which normally didn't filter up to detectives. But we could process through that crime so much quicker than they could. So we just figured we'd go pick it up, and it ended up being transients. We get them transported back to the office. Once we get back to the office, we get a call. My partner gets a call from our boss saying, hey, drop what you're doing. You need to get over to the Palace Station. There's been a robbery. We drop what we're doing. We kick the transients out. We head on our way over, and on our way over, he gets another phone call. And I hear him talking. My partner's name's Eddie, New Jersey accent, just a great guy. And he's being kind of colorful and laughing at his response. And he gets off the phone. He says, "Hey, don't call me a liar. Don't tell just hear me out. What I'm going to tell you." And he says, "We're going because right now it's accused that O.J. Simpson committed a robbery at the Palace Station."
You hear those words, O.J. Simpson. Kato's quite familiar with them. What was your first reaction?
Disbelief. You don't believe why would he come to Las Vegas and do an armed robbery in a casino? It doesn't make sense.
Why in the world is he at Palace Station of all casinos too? Why is he not at the Wynn? Why is he not at whatever the nicest one, Bellagio or something?
Sure.
He's at Palace Station. So there's a reason he's at Palace Station, correct?
Yeah, he goes to meet up there. But you're right. I mean, that's our thought process too.
Oh, yeah.
Palace Station. But so he's going there for a meeting, and the meeting was all set up, and it was all around that meeting that robbery happened.
And all the details of this are going to come out. You're going to hear step by step what happened that evening, the following days, what OJ did, what he said, the evidence that they uncovered, the star witness that came out of nowhere, almost from the heavens, that turned this entire case around. OJ, how he acted in jail and the repercussions of that. It is a truly unbelievable story. Andy Caldwell doesn't do interviews. He was in a huge documentary on Amazon. Highly recommended. It's very good. It's called Arrested in Vegas. OJ Busted. We'll get the exact title, but it was an incredible documentary that Andy was the star of. Today's episode is sponsored by our very good friends at Aura. Have you ever Googled your name and seen what's come up, or maybe Google your email address just to kind of find out what's out there? I'll tell you what, man, if you do that, I've done it. It makes you feel so uncomfortable to realize what kind of information about you is out there. And data brokers, they get this information and they sell it to scammers, to spammers, and anyone else who may want to target you. Your name, your email address, your home address, your health records, even for your relatives. It's all out there. And that's why I've been using Aura, and so has Kato. Aura shows us which data brokers are selling our information and automatically submits opt-out requests for us. It's incredible. Cleaning up my information not only helps reduce the amount of spam I get, but it protects me from hackers who could use this information to help them access my social media accounts, my bank accounts, or any sensitive information that is out there about you. I don't know if you saw this, but AT&T revealed recently that over 73 million customer records, both existing and former customers, were hacked. All this sensitive information out there, all of it released on the dark web. They recommend that those affected use strong passwords, monitor account activity, and consider credit freezes or fraud alerts from credit bureaus. But you know what? Aura does all of this for me, you, Kato, all of us. And best of all, I don't have to download several different apps just because a company couldn't keep my data secure. If my info was compromised in that AT&T data search or that data breach, I wouldn't worry because Aura is always on, always doing the hard work of keeping me safe, and they can do the same thing for you. We have a special offer for you. Go to aura.com/1degree. That's aura.com/1degree. And you're going to get a free 2-week trial to test out Aura on your own. You're going to love it. And Andy, talk about step by step after that. You have disbelief that OJ's involved in this. Where do you go first?
When we pull in the parking lot, you go straight to security. Because when you're talking to security, they're going to know if somebody famous is on property. So the very first thing we do is we find security and we ask, hey, is there any chance O.J. Simpson's on property? Instantly, no. There's no chance. That did not happen. And so you already have this presupposition built in your mind that it's not O.J. Simpson. It just builds when security tells you no.
Yeah. And Kato, one thing they'd be looking for is there any evidence that OJ was in the building, right? And the first thing you think is video. And isn't there a video of him walking in?
Well, saying that, you're thinking to yourself, what kind of security is at Palace Station to miss a call like that, correct?
Absolutely, yes. But that is our thought process, that we're going to get to video, but we need to go talk to the people who are making the allegation. We need to find out, why are they accusing O.J. Simpson of actually committing a crime? What's their connection to him? And they're pretty sure of themselves that it was O.J. Simpson and guns were involved. In fact, it's 6 people involved in this. So we need to get to them. So we had security take us back to them, and that's it picked up from there.
Yep. So it starts unfolding, and we're talking about a very kind of crazy cast of characters here. We're not talking about Boy Scouts. You know, OJ's OJ, and his involvement is going to become very clear for you guys as you uncover the evidence. But tell me a little bit about these co-defendants, these co-criminals, these alleged members of this little team.
Yeah. So eventually, when we have them identified, they're just a cast of oddballs. 2 of them were longtime criminals. One was a cook. One was just a guy who just ended up meeting OJ and wanted to hang out with him. One was a longtime friend. So it's just this cast of characters. It's so strange, but it's what followed OJ Simpson around. And even the 2 victims that were in the room, both of them guys were characters. Big, gregarious guys, very loud, very, very outgoing. And when they were robbed, they weren't quiet about it. They were making such a ruckus in the security office, we had to have them separated because you couldn't get them to shut up to get a story out of them.
Kato, Andy mentioned one of this crew was a quote-unquote hanger-on. You saw that. You witnessed it. Did you see that a lot back in the day? Were there people that just glonged onto him?
No, you know what? We mentioned this before in another podcast, and you sort of succinctly put it there. It's birds of a feather flock together. You hang around bad people, bad things are going to happen. Back in the day, he had lawyers with him. He was on board of 12 different companies, and it was just how far you fall. And you can't get those people back. You just go, and whatever dreads of society are there that will cling on to you. He's a guy that likes to be adulated, so he got, this guy loves me. You can hang, and like you said, these people that he's hanging with are 2 of them were career criminals.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Andy, this all comes down to memorabilia, family heirlooms. I think a lot of people think it was like just his. Maybe some records or some trophies and things like that relating to his football career. But what was the intent of these guys having it in the room in the first place, and OJ and his cast of characters going to the Palace Station and trying to get it?
Yeah, so it's kind of this interesting backstory that most people don't know. In fact, if I go up to most people on the street today and say, hey, what did O.J. Simpson go to prison for? Most people will say, well, he took his own stuff back, which is not true, because what ended up being in that room, Joe Montana, Pete Rose, Duke Snyder, West Point, that memorabilia was in the room. There was some stuff that was at one time belonged to O.J., but the majority of the property in the room had nothing to do with him. So ultimately what had happened is there was a property, this guy purchases a storage unit. He basically says, hey, I hit the gold mine here. I have a bunch of O.J. Simpson's family heirlooms. I want to sell it. So he seeks out a market for this. He seeks out the market, and he finds this guy who's just a sycophant. I mean, he is just an O.J. nut named Tom Beardsley. Tom Beardsley just wants to be around anything O.J. Doesn't matter what it is, anything O.J. He wants to be involved. So he starts trying to broker a deal for the guy who wants to sell O.J. stuff. He reaches out to another party here in L.A. called Tom Riccio. Tom Riccio is a pretty well-known memorabilia dealer, and he says, hey, I got all this O.J. Simpson memorabilia, and I want to connect up to a good buyer. Now, at this point, Tom Riccio figures out that we should reach out to O.J., and we should get O.J. involved, but he doesn't tell anybody else O.J.'s involved. He just says, hey, I got a buyer for all this stuff.
Incredible. Did OJ go to Vegas for the sole intent, because he was living in Florida, did he go there to get his stuff back, or was he there for another reason and then this opportunity arose?
So there was a planned wedding. A guy named Tom Scotto was getting married that weekend.
So we got 3 Toms. I'm confused now. We got Tom Zenner now too. So I get the story straight for everybody that's listening. Tom Rizzo is calling OJ to set it up. What was the other Tom's name? Beardsley said?
We got an Alfred Beardsley, who's like a middleman in this.
Okay, he's not the guy going to purchase it.
In fact, he ran for mayor of Burbank. The guy's he's an interesting character.
Okay, I just wanted to...
He's a nutty guy, but yeah. So he middlemans this deal.
Got it.
He calls Tom Riccio. Tom Riccio now reaches out to OJ and says, "Hey, I can connect you with this stuff you've been looking for over the years."
And OJ's saying, "I want it back."
He is. He says he wants it back, and Tom Riccio basically says, "I'll put you in touch with it if you sign 200 of these books," right? And at the time, if you remember, he had just written that book, If I Done It, right? Or If I Did It. But he lost the rights to it. So Tom Riccio figures, hey, if I get OJ to sign 200 of these books, he can't sign anyone else. He gives me that agreement, right? These books are going to be valuable. So Tom Riccio has an incentive to make this deal happen. And this is what it all revolves around.
Wow.
And that's the backstory most people don't know.
Can you imagine that OJ, when he got convicted, he should have wrote a book, If I Robbed It? It would be...
That'll be the sequel.
That'll be the right?
sequel,
He goes, Tom Rizzo, we signed this book now.
And he goes, "Oh, actually, I did rob it. I have the prison term to prove it." Okay, so you go in there blind. Let's start putting pieces
Yeah, this is
together,
great.
you and your partner. Luckily, they have someone like you who I've gotten to know you over the years. I mean, you're just a really thoughtful, thought process guy, very reasonable, great street smarts, and you have this way to connect with humans. And I would imagine that's valuable. That's a valuable tool for a detective like you that needs information. So it's complicated. There's moving parts here. How did you start stringing it together, and how soon did you have to go talk to OJ to figure out his side of this?
Well, we're still at the point meeting the 2 victims that we don't believe it's OJ. It doesn't make sense, right? Security says no. Why would he be with these people at the Palace Station? It doesn't make sense, right? So we separate the victims. We get the one victim who actually had the property stolen from him, and we sit him down and we, okay, what's your connection to OJ? Why do you say it's OJ? Well, he's OJ's manager back from 20 years ago, back from before 1994. And so all of a sudden you start connecting some dots thinking, all right, this is strange. Start asking him questions in various ways, and he's consistent with what he's saying. He's consistent with, no, it was OJ, it was 3 other black guys, and 2 white guys. 2 of them had guns. Story's consistent. It doesn't change. So we stop the interview. We're about 15, 20 minutes in. Stop the interview. I need my partner to go look at video because we knew we had video. So he goes upstairs to look at the eye in the sky and say, okay, what actually happened here? And I get back down. I'm interviewing, finishing up my interview with the victim, and I get a call from Eddie. And I stop the interview. And again, you know, Eddie's got that New Jersey accent, and he's colorful in his language and his presentation. He's like, "You're not going to believe this. It's O.J. Simpson." And of course, I'm in disbelief. And I said, "Well, how do you know?" And he said, "I'd know that busted up walk anywhere I saw it." So he watched him walk down the steps coming down. He's like, "That's O.J. Simpson." And that was a game changer, right? That was a moment when all of a sudden, full stop, right? We now have to say, all right, we need to give this all of our attention. We need to figure out what happened here, and we need to give this the attention it deserves.
And this is all within hours of this all starting, right? So the DA isn't involved yet. Were your superiors involved? How does the chain of command work in a situation like this when you now have verified it's O.J. Simpson that is involved?
So when I say that's full stop, that's the notification goes up the chain at that point, right? We're pushing in the evening hours. So the robbery happens in the evening. It's actually September 13th, the day it actually happens. It's Thursday. And so information's going to flow up because it's middle of the work week. So people are, they're going to get it. And now we're going to start getting information or pushback from them or direction from them. So we continue on with our investigation. Now, the DA's office doesn't know anything about it yet. It's just the police side that knows what's going on. We continue with our interviews. We start gathering evidence. We get still pictures of the suspects. We start figuring out, okay, how many people we got involved. And at some point, I need to get a search warrant. And I need to get a search warrant for Tom Riccio's car, the guy who set this whole thing up. And I need to get a search warrant for that room that Tom Riccio had rented where the robbery actually happened. But the search warrant was only to process it for forensics. We wanted fingerprints. We wanted any DNA we could get from the room. We wanted that to help us identify all the other guys that were involved. And that's the moment that you realize how big it was, because the phone call goes to we had an on-call DA first that you would run the probable cause by before you called a judge. I called her, and she said, "I can't approve this. I need to call you back." 5 minutes later, I get a call back from one of the more senior prosecutors. Said, okay, hold on. What's going on here? And that's when, at that point, you realize, okay, this is going to blow up.
Yeah.
And you're in that room when you say he rented the room. So he had a room he's staying in, and he's renting the room for just people to come in to look at memorabilia, correct?
That's it. That transaction was happening there.
Now, if I remember, you correct me, you want to get search warrant. Now, in that search warrant, when you're going in there, don't you find a camera? Isn't it all being filmed?
Well, yeah, that comes definitely
It
later, for
Okay.
sure. Yeah. But I mean, that doesn't happen right away.
No,
Yeah.
in fact, that happened days
Yeah.
later. It was very, that caught us off guard.
Yeah.
Oh, see, I'm playing detective now. I'm going right to it because I'm going, real quick, what is your opinion? You said you met these people in the room. What's your opinion of like a Tom Riccio? What do you think first time and then interviewing him? What's your description of him?
So he's one of those fast talkers, right? He's in the memorabilia world. He deals with people on word of mouth deals, but he's also one of those people. He talks fast to try to confuse you, and I think he just banks on that. He banks on the fact that I'm going to talk fast. I'm going to give stories. I'm going to change stories.'re not going to track it. I'm going to pull it over on you.
And which is something that you have to deal with here in interrogation room, right? You kind of obviously have to have some kind of psychology of, okay, I classify this guy as he's a fast talker. He's going to try to make me believe his story.
Right.
And we all know people like that. They're
Yeah.
kind of sleazy. You can sense it from a mile away. Yeah, and I can only imagine. You look at that video and you see him walking in, and he's got guys next to him. So it starts verifying everything. OJ is involved. Did the thought for you and your partner ever enter your mind like, okay, the microscope is going to be on me now. Everything I do because OJ's involved and because what happened in LA is going to be written about, reported on. I have to be very, very careful about what I'm doing, or your detective instincts just kicking in and you're doing your job.
I think that night it was just do your job. Figure out what happened. You recognize that this is going to be a big deal, but that's not the primary focus right now. The primary focus is figure out what happened. You know, you talk about Tom Riccio.
Yeah.
The antidote to that is just putting him in handcuffs. Because I would say I talked with him for maybe 5 minutes, and I was like, I'm done. You're going in handcuffs.
Wow.
You're just under arrest. The only reason he didn't go to jail that night is because the prosecutor said he might make a better witness than a suspect. And then that led to the question you asked about the recording.
Wow. You know what, Tom? It's before that even happened. You remember after OJ was acquitted, he started getting into more trouble. There were always stories about him in Florida. There were 911 calls. There's so much going on, and everybody, myself included, he's going to screw up somewhere. There's going to be a big screw up, and that was the big screw up of someone's going to catch him and put him in jail, and it's from this memorabilia. Who would have thought?
Incredible. And just to keep the timeline going, we're still just hours after, you get this initial call, but things are kind of moving fast. We're entering the wee hours. Is one of your strategies to separate these people and see if their stories are straight? Because they're all looking after their own ass at this point. You would imagine with these clowns that he's with and that would do something this stupid, self-preservation is number one for him.
Yeah, and so the two victims, separate them. Their stories are consistent. The oddball in the picture was Tom Riccio because he's in there saying, hey, this is my room. I rent it. I set this whole thing up. I arranged for everybody to be here. So he's the one that's confusing us because I've never worked a case like that. I've never heard of a case like that. Mm-hmm. He's the odd one that we got to figure out what is this guy doing and how does he come into play in this situation?
Incredible. So at this point, on top of normal police work, you do need breaks. You need a little luck. Idiots can help you with that sometimes, and so can people that have dated idiots. What was next? Was there something pivotal that happened in maybe the next 6 hours, 12 hours that accelerated this and made your job a little bit easier?
Yeah, we had the hurdle first of, this happened in the evening hours. And when you're at a casino, it's their goal to make you not know time, right? So we go in, it's September, there's still a bit of light outside, but you don't know it once you're in. By the time we leave, it's 7, 8 o'clock the next morning, and we had no idea how late it was. And by the time you go out, the media trucks are already starting to set up in the parking lot, in the empty lots around the casino. Now, our admin was aware this was a pretty big deal. So before my partner and I went home, they wanted us to type up a request for an arrest warrant, and they didn't want us to leave that day until we had an assigned arrest warrant in our hands. So we go back to the office and we go type, right? We type everything we know and learned at this point. We type it up. We walk down to the DA's office. We hand it to the DA. he already knows what's going on because one of his staff got the phone call.
And to correct, and just to jump in here, you're talking about paperwork that could get O.J. Simpson involved and arrested, right? Or is he out of it at this point?
No, we want an arrest warrant to arrest O.J. Simpson for armed robbery, kidnapping with the use of a deadly weapon, and burglary with a firearm.
And in your mind, now you're going back to the actual trial in 94, 95, and 96, where you're going, well, they blame the detectives on a lot of things. So you're making sure you're doing everything correct. I mean, you're just everything, crossing your T's, dotting your I's to make sure we didn't screw up. Eddie, your partner.
Yeah, everything.
And you're carrying the documents.
Yeah, so we're
in an envelope.
I am. We drive down. We run into the district attorney outside of his office, and I hand it to him, and he knows what's going on. He knows who we are. He knows what we're there for. He takes it and he says, "Thank you." I look at him, and he's not going to open it or anything. And again, one of the smartest men I have ever worked with, David Roger. And I said, "Hey, my captain says Eddie and I are staying here until we get an approval or denial on this arrest warrant." And he looks at me, he says, "I'll get to it when I get to it, and you're not going to stay here." And he just looks at Eddie and I, and we kind of get the hint, and we're like, well, I guess we're going back to the office. We told our captain, "Hey, David wants time to go through this, and he's not going to give a decision right now." Which, in hindsight, again, I'm going to tell you, one of the smartest men I ever worked around. He was right, but then we got to go home for the day.
Okay, well, you need rest. A detective has to recharge and get right back into the fray. Kato, I asked Andy this question too because this can make careers. You can become a star from this. And I was wondering if that district attorney had any illusions of that, thinking, "Oh, this is my opportunity." DAs have to get elected, right? This could be an advantage for him. You said no. He's great stand-up guy.
Stand-up guy. Yeah. Never took advantage of it. Did some interviews, always very fact-based.
Yeah.
Just the guy did a phenomenal job, right? Him and Chris Owens was the chief deputy. Just phenomenal.
Yeah, Kato, if anybody understands what it's like to just wait and hope for the best, you've been through that. I mean, you can imagine when you're carrying those documents, were you thinking already how you're going to arrest O.J. Simpson? Thinking it'd be a formality, you get the green light, you go get him?
Yeah, because by that point, we already figured out that he was back at the Palms. We had a surveillance team on him. So the moment that was signed, we were ready to grab him. He was ready to go to jail.
Kato, did he have a lot of memorabilia in the house? Was memorabilia a big thing to him, remembering the past and his accomplishments?
He had trophies around. So, but I had the guest house. I was not really in the main house, but I did see the Heisman. I did see different trophies that were all around, and he had a lot of memorabilia from films. So he did keep certain things, and I'm sure that the other stuff that he kept, he did not just have in the house. I'm sure he had locked the way that stuff that were probably meant to him, meant something to him. So I don't know, but it's interesting because you mentioned that you were at a surveillance team, you're at the Palm, and I don't know what the date, what it's going, how long he's staying in Vegas. So that's got to be on your mind also, right? Because you're saying, okay.
Yeah, he could leave.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he's not arrested.
I mean, that's his MO. You'd think he'd be out of town, but luckily he wasn't.
A lot of things broke our way in this, and sometimes it does come to people just being, and I think I've talked about it before. He exists in a world that's totally different than the reality we exist in. He doesn't think he does wrong. Right. He doesn't. So in his mind, what does he have to run for?
Yeah.
Well, and Vegas is all about odds.
There you go.
He stayed in town.
Well, you don't have the green light yet. So you go home, recharge your batteries, tell your wife, "Hey, I'm working on something interesting."
Right.
You see the news? Could you sleep? Maybe you got a little bit of rest. And then what happens when you wake up and you get going? Because you got to be thinking, okay, what have we missed? What can we go find? What's the smoking gun? Can we catch a break? What happened next?
So the next morning, my partner, Eddie, and we come back in the office. And sure enough, a lady had called in a tip to the office. She called in a tip to two of the guys we worked with, and they already vetted out the tip. Now, we'd been getting tips like you can't imagine. The moment this hit national news, we're getting tips from all over the country. People, and this goes back to that person of O.J. Simpson. Everybody wants to be involved. They want to touch his life or be able to say, I have some connection to him. So people are giving us conspiracy theories, but the two guys vetted this one out, and this was good. And it was an ex-girlfriend of one of the suspects who wanted him arrested. She saw him on the news and said, "That was Walter Alexander. He's leaving today at, I think, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He's flying on this airplane. He's leaving out of Las Vegas airport."
He's going, "Why did I ever date her?"
Yeah, wow.
But, that makes sense because, like I said, these guys have a track record. They have a history. They've scorned women, and she saw him, and she says, he's not getting away with this one. But was she calling to rat out the ex-boyfriend or OJ?
No, my opinion is she wanted him.
Walter Alexander.
Walter Alexander.
Yeah.
She just wanted him nailed. She wanted him caught. She didn't like the fact that he was up there. She wanted him in jail.
Okay, so slowly, some of the pieces maybe are starting to come together in this big puzzle that you guys have to put together. You still don't know if OJ's going to flee. You still haven't been able to arrest him. After the tip, how does the momentum keep going?
So the gun is everything, right? The gun is everything in this crime. The crime still can happen with robbery, burglary, kidnapping, but with a firearm, it changes everything. Walter Alexander is one of the gunmen, so we want him. So we now know that the arrest of O.J. Simpson's in the DA's hands. We're holding off on that. So now our focus is let's figure out who these other 5 guys are. We have one. We know where he's going to be. We actually go to the airport police and we say, hey, is there any way we can flag his seat so the moment he checks in, something's wrong with his ticket and we can come grab him? Wow. So that's what we do. But we actually identify him before he gets to the counter. We see him coming. We got him from the surveillance pictures and we pull him.
Does he see you coming?
No, because we were all in plain clothes.
Got it.
But the moment I identified myself, it didn't bat an eye. He knew what it was. So I said, hey, can you follow me upstairs? Can you bring your luggage and we're going to go.
And where is he Is he flying to Florida?
No, he's flying down to Phoenix.
Okay.
So he says, yeah, I'll follow you. Doesn't bat an eye. We get upstairs. I advise him his rights. The guy wants a lawyer instantly. He wants to talk to a lawyer.
He knows the whole thing. He knows what's going on. Like, I want a lawyer.
So
it's happened before.
I tell him, hey, I'm going to get a search warrant. I'm going in your bag. Now, I'm not asking him questions because he asked for a lawyer. So, everything's off right now. So as I'm getting the search warrant for his bag, he says the stuff's not in there. And, that's all good stuff, right? Because I didn't ask him the question. He volunteers it. So I said something along the lines. He tells me the suit's in there, though. So sure enough, I get the search warrant. I open it up, and there's a suit. And I was like, okay.
The suit he was wearing?
The suit he was wearing.
Okay.
And the reason that becomes important, and if you look at the pictures I'll give you on those the flash drive, as the suspects come in, the 2 gunmen, they come in with their suits buttoned up, right? But as they're going out, the suits are unbuttoned. So clearly they went in, they opened, they drew, and then they put it back in. And that was again, pivotal. Everything revolved around them having guns.
Yep. And ultimately, it was really bad for OJ because of the sentence. We'll get to that. But guns changed this case instantly. It's like a movie, Kato, in a couple regards. When you see that video, these guys walking into the Palace Station, kind of grainy black and white video, that's a movie. And then you guys, just kind of hanging out, in the airport, waiting for your guy, boom, pouncing.
Well, and the thing is, I'm sure it's Nevada law, is even though if OJ has nothing to do with the gun, he doesn't know there's guns, but as soon as someone has a gun, he's guilty of that no matter what, correct?
Right. The moment they're in the room and they all commit a crime together,
Yep.
that gun is it might as well be in all of their hands.
Okay.
And that's the question that everybody wants that's watching this probably right now.
Yeah.
Whose idea was it for the guns? And did OJ know about the guns going in?
So right now, we're just going to base that opinion or that thought process on the 2 guys who had the guns, who specifically will tell you OJ asked them to bring guns.
Okay.
Did he give that information up right away?
No, he wanted a deal. He was willing to talk, but he wanted something on paper saying, if I talk, I get something. So the DA comes in, his attorney comes in, they all work out a deal, and he gives us a statement. And in that statement, he gives us everything. He gives us the co-defendants' names that live in Vegas. He tells us where the guns are, who had the guns. He breaks it all down to us also about OJ telling them to bring the guns.
Yeah. So within 18 hours, you have 2 of these guys cutting deals for themselves already.
One cutting the deal so far, but we got the other ones identified.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
What was the deal?
So he got no prison time. So he was one of the gunmen who got basically probation.
But that's how it works sometimes, right? I mean, you got to make those trade-offs, don't you?
You do, especially when you need information, right? And the prosecutor at the time, David Roger, I loved him. He would say the first horse to the trough gets the cleanest water.
So let me ask you, Walter Alexander got a deal with no prison time, right?
That's right.
Had it been OJ making that deal, that would have happened? If OJ said, hey, listen, here's the story. I'm going to turn these guys in. Here's the names.
That's so hard for me to say.
Is a good question.
That's a great question.
It's
Great
like,
question.
Wonder it could have been that way, correct?
It could have been.
Theoretically.
Yeah,
But it's not impossible.
I'm just saying, because this Walter Alexander, so he's the guy who sort of told his story first, so he got the deal.
Here's one of the things I know that most people don't know. OJ was offered deals before the trial started. I mean, he was offered pretty remarkable deals, and he turned them all down. He turned them down the day of the trial. He wanted to go to trial.
Ego related.
Ego related. He thought he was going to beat this.
All ego.
So I don't know that he would have asked for a deal because I don't know that he exists in a world where he sees he did anything wrong.
Yeah. Or where he couldn't get out of.
Or he
Hire the right people, lie enough, use his charm, use his charisma. That's a great question. OJ didn't have a gun, though.
He did not. No.
Okay. All right. Okay. So within 18 hours, less than a day, less than 24 hours, the thing's starting to move a little bit quicker now. Where does your focus go back to OJ and thinking, do we have enough now, Mr. DA? Can we go get him?
It comes down to a point where there's a decision made where there's going to be guys on our day off that went and arrested him. And the hard part about this is if you go arrest him and you don't know anything about the case, you got to call the people in who knew about the case anyways. So why didn't you just call them and say, hey, it's time to go get him? So an arrest was actually made. We weren't part of the actual arrest. We just had to come in and do all the paperwork. It's kind of one of those oddities of the case that you scratch your head. But again, it'll go back to that people wanted to be involved. People wanted their hands in the cookie jar. And in investigations, that's not a good thing. But because it's OJ, everybody wants to be involved.
Yeah, but then you get right back into the middle of the action of everything. When you look back at this now, 15 years later or whatever it is, do you think to yourself, man, without that break, he could have walked. Without that, it couldn't have happened. Without this, without that. I mean, it's almost like karma was involved, where a lot of things conspired to work against OJ, right? In a way that, you know, he couldn't do what he normally would do, is somehow skate.
Right. I got to tell you, had we not got the guns as quick as we did, yeah, it would have been a totally different story. He would not have went to prison for as long as he did. The guns were everything. So it's because we got Walter Alexander so early that we got the guns.
Wow. You know, Tom, it's in other shows you always talk about, or I would mention to you about your blueprint in life. You think, okay, I came out to be an actor the whole thing, and that's my blueprint, and how I look at my life now today, I go, this blueprint. Can you imagine, OJ's dead now, but his blueprint going, he's going to be this huge success, a running back, Heisman Trophy, have an incredible career, film career, have a beautiful family, and just to see it, the pedestal being pulled, and just the story and tragedy is amazing of what happened, and you're part of it.
Yeah.
To have this of how far someone can fall.
Right.
What was the word when he got arrested? Did he resist? Did he try to flip on that switch of charm that he normally does? Did he think he was busted?
Charm. I think that's a go-to for him. When he's faced with a reality that he doesn't want to accept, I think he goes into this alternate world where he just tries to charm everybody into believing what he believes himself.
Well, how did he try to charm you?
Oh, I had a couple interactions. My first was a phone call. He left me a voicemail. It was, probably a 45-second rambling voicemail where, he's going to partner up with me and how we're going to solve this crime together. And he's laughing and joking like we're longtime best friends, and how we're going to team up together and get this thing right. And the same thing in the jail. We had another interaction. Eddie was with me on that one. And the guy just has the ability to sit there in handcuffs in his orange jumpsuit in an interview room, look down in the dumps, and the moment we come in, he lights up like I just saw my long-lost best friends.
Hey, bud. Yeah, it's funny because he did the exact same thing after the murders. He was going to try to find the real murderers. He's going to try to find the people involved in this case. It's unbelievable because you go to that exact same card. All right, everything happened at the Palace Station. He's staying at the Palms.
Right.
And at some point, you and Eddie and a couple other people had to go to the Palms and talk to him. So describe that.
So, again, we had a surveillance team on him. The moment it happened, surveillance stayed on OJ until we figured out when the arrest was going to happen. Eddie and I, we're going to go interview him. He arranges it, but he has a lawyer, so we got to be careful. My supervisor at the time thought, well, it's probably better to make this a softer approach. So he takes Eddie out of the equation, and he puts one of the other detectives on our squad, Linda Turner, figuring that a female detective would just soften the environment, right?
Right.
So now the four of us are going to go up. I'm supposed to knock on the door. He's going to invite me and Linda in. And at that point, my boss and Eddie, they're just going to kind of cut bait and head out and wait for us to do this interview. And it went all kinds of crazy on us.
Well, I want to hear.
Oh, yeah. Well,
yeah.
first of all, I saw Linda in the documentary. She's got this unique kind of charm about her, kind of aw shucks, but she's really by the book. I mean, she's very technical.
She's like the cop in Fargo.
But you almost like find her to be a little bit innocent or a little naive, but I'm sure she's not. So you kind of had this 1-2 punch, good cop, bad cop probably going on in here. So what was that like when you were there meeting with him and he's sitting on his bed and his girlfriend was in there at the time too?
Well, the craziest thing is, and this is going to go back to how powerful that star power is that he has, right? Or that charisma that he has. You knock at the door, he opens the door, and even though I know he just committed a crime and probably was guilty of other crimes that he got away with, I'm starstruck. You know, I'm standing here looking at O.J. Simpson, right? And the funniest thing happened, and I still remember this very vividly. It wasn't until I realized that he was wearing the exact same clothes that day, 2 days later, that he wore during the robbery, that I thought, okay, this is just the same old dirtbag. You know, just because he was famous at one time, he's nothing now, right? And it was actually nice for my mind to bring it back down to, okay, a crime happened, let's get down to it. But the guy, he invites us in, and he invites Linda and I in, but that wasn't good enough. He's like, no, you guys come in too. It's OJ, right? So my boss is like, okay, well, it's OJ Sweet, I'll go too. And, and rightfully, Eddie came. I wanted Eddie to come with me anyway. So Eddie comes in the room, and one of my favorite moments of all my career is O.J. Simpson leaning out into the hallway, and our crack surveillance crew that's watching them, right? The guys that are so good, you would never know they're out there on any other suspect, but it's O.J., right? He leans out in the hallway. He had already identified this crack surveillance crew, and he said, hey, guys, you want to come in too? Come on in.
So is it like a movie dressed as waiters and
well, they'll use props, right? They'll use newspapers, drinks.
Oh, but they're just okay. It's like a Pink Panther movie.
Why is there a well-dressed maid in the hallway?
Yeah,
right. And all the
carrying a gun.
These guys put down all their props, and here they come in the room, and I'm sitting there thinking, great. Now I got an audience to try to knock out an interview, which you don't want. You know, you want that personal connection to get a good interview.
You were in there. There's just so many bizarre elements. I've heard, you can verify it, his girlfriend at the time had resemblance to Nicole.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Proudy or I can't remember her name.
I think that was her last name, Proudy. Yeah. I don't know the first name, but I think you're right.
She's got a little dog she's carrying around.
Yeah, so there's two of them. His girlfriend, and she had a friend in there, and they're running down to the pool, and they're chasing a little dog around the room, and the dog's yapping, and they're trying to put a sweater on this thing, which is crazy.
So let me paint a picture. You're in the room, so I can get this right. It's OJ, two dogs, the girl and her girlfriend, Eddie, your boss, the female detective Linda.
Yep.
And the other guys. I don't know if they came in the surveillance team. So it's a suite, obviously.
It's a suite. Yeah.
Is there enough chairs? Where is he sitting? Are you talking him standing? Are you on the bed? Or what's going on?
So he sits down on the corner of his bed, right, while this whole show is going on. The surveillance, there's 6 of them. They all go up into the bar area that's, so it's a suite. It's a big place. So they go up to where the bar is, and they're just hanging out up there, leaning on this, watching this whole show unfold. And then Eddie and I sit down, and Linda does a good job. She actually sits behind him, and I don't know that she actually he paid attention to where Linda was sitting. And Linda just started taking notes, because remember, he asked for an attorney, so we can't ask him questions. But anything he says, if it relates to the crime, we get it.
And the attorney's there.
No, the attorney didn't show. That was the problem.
Yeah, so
my
OJ again
God.
thinks he can get out of it. By the way, as you're watching this, we have so many more unbelievable elements to this story. So enjoy. There's some things that are just going to shock you when you hear some of this. I'll give you an interesting sidebar to this. I won't go into the details, but I was staying at the Palms at the exact same time. I saw OJ the night before the robbery. I've mentioned this to you, Kato, but I was there that whole weekend. It was a very bizarre situation. I knew all about it when he got nabbed. I wish I would have known you. I would have said, go get him, Andy.
You probably crossed paths without knowing it.
Your read of OJ at the time, you are an expert at reading people. You've heard every BS excuse, every line, every alibi. You can tell if someone's lying to you in a second. Was he up and down, thinking in his mind, this is real. Oh, I'll get out of it. These guys are serious. Oh, I'm screwed. What were you feeling on the vibe from him?
He was going to talk us out of it, but in my opinion, he was high on coke during our interview. Okay. So you got to weigh that into the whole conversation of, even in an interview, his actions, they were all just indicative of somebody who was on cocaine.
Not grass, as Tom Lang would say.
No.
Wasn't that classic, Kato?
Yeah.
Go back and watch our episode with Tom Lang a couple weeks ago. It was unbelievable. Detective Tom Lang, the OG.
Yeah.
What a star. That's how he described it. Grass. That was just like a 70s flashback. It was so cool.
He probably said there's two broads there.
Oh, what happens when you leave the room? What are you thinking? What is he thinking? What happens next?
So we go downstairs and we just gather the notes, right? And in the notes that Linda had taken, he essentially admitted to doing the robbery. He admitted to being there for the purpose of getting property. He wasn't about to admit to the guns. The guns was something that they consistently tried to stay away from throughout the entire contact or interaction we had with him. I think he's smart enough to know that the guns were the game changer.
Right.
And so that was...
Sure.
It sounds
stayed
like a
away
phone
from
call. He did talk to the lawyer who probably gave him that advice.
I would
Because he
imagine.
did talk to a lawyer at one point. The lawyer just didn't show up.
Well, the lawyer was probably in a different state, I would imagine. Unless, no, he had to get one in Florida or in Las Vegas already. He had Florida.
His actual attorney, the guy who represented him in Florida, had flown out for the wedding as well. So name was Galanter.
Okay.
So he was actually in town too.
Which is probably the biggest gaffe, I think.
Yeah, is it?
What's the reason? And that would have really pissed off. Did OJ maybe say, "I don't need you," or I don't need a
Like, is it a
because that's the most important thing. The lawyer would go, "OJ,
Don't say anything."
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't that a general rule? Don't talk?
Yeah, anytime anybody asks for a lawyer, our instant thought is, okay, well, the interview's done, but not with him. But again, I'll go back to that. He's got that personality that he doesn't exist in the reality the rest of us do.
Yeah, you saw that. You may have heard about that from the 90s, and everybody did, but then you're a witness to it. It had to be kind of eerie.
It is. It's strange.
Was it so atypical from other people you've arrested and dealt with in the criminal world, or is that kind of normal?
No, it's very abnormal. In fact, a lot of the things you look for in interviews, he's not going to tick them because he's not having the same bodily reactions that another person's going to have to lying. He just lies. It's not a big deal because because in his world it's okay.
I do form an opinion after the interview. Do you guys all go in the elevator, get back in the car, and you say to yourself, "He's going to go to jail."
Yeah, without question.
You got that out because you already know. Boy, he's admitted.
Yeah, we just know when is it? When's it going to happen? At that point, it's going to happen. Just when.
It's not if at that point.
Right.
A few more breaks fell your way. One of incredible dramatic elements to it, which really, I mean, you couldn't even make this up. And you're thinking, as a detective, you're thinking, what's one thing that could just make this a slam dunk? Wow, what if someone recorded it? What if there was video? What if there was audio? Unlike the 90s, where there wasn't anything like that to pin them there exactly, what happened?
Yeah, so this is a break that, of course, any detective's going to want, but how it unfolded, no one would want, right? So we're going out to serve search warrants, and as we're going out to serve search warrants, Linda Turner, the detective on our squad, she has her computer screen up, and she sees a flash news notice come up and says, hey, audio recording of the O.J. Simpson robbery, we're going to release it at midnight.
On TMZ.
On TMZ. And doesn't make sense. How is that even possible? So we go out and serve the search warrant. I asked her if she could just stick back in the office and see what it is and let me know. And sure enough, we're out doing the search warrants, and she calls me and she says, it's the robbery. It literally is O.J. Simpson walking into the room, ordering them around, stealing stuff, and leaving. And we can't figure out how they have it. Now, it doesn't take long from interactions to know that it had something to do with Tom Riccio.
Right.
But again, we didn't know how Tom Riccio had it, but we knew Tom Riccio had it.
Yeah, and he didn't have to tell you that, I guess, at the time, right? It would have been helpful at the moment, and you didn't even think, hey, did you record this? So where do you go? What do you do next to try to get your hands on this?
Of course, Tom Riccio gets a lawyer, so we can't interact with him directly, so we go to the DA's office. DA's office says, hey, we want that recorder. The DA's office works out a deal with Tom Riccio's attorney, and Tom Riccio ends up getting immunity from anything that could have come from that incident. So Eddie and I drive out to, he lives out here in L.A., so we drive out to go pick up the audio recording that day. I mean, that was how hot that recording was. We wanted it. We wanted the device. We wanted everything.
You flew in from Vegas to L.A.
No, we just drove. It was, I mean, it's a 4-hour drive.
Yeah.
So it's quick turnaround. One of the things, we didn't want media involved. We didn't want any of that. And if we turned up his street and he had every media outlet you can imagine, there was probably 10 of those full-size, satellite trucks out front, and you thought, you've got to be kidding me. And so he made it a big media circus and invited us in, and his lawyer was there, but he gave us the recording device.
Wow. Everybody was an opportunist, weren't they? Absolutely. Always thinking about ways to either profit from this or stay out of trouble. These are career shysters, basically.
And I wonder if Tom, I have no idea if Tom Rizzo, if he got money from TMZ or not.
Oh, he had to.
Yeah,
I mean,
something
they
like
paid.
that.
Someone got paid for that video, for that audio.
Yeah, he was very open with that. It was over six figures.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They're not just going to hand that over.
Holy cow.
Yeah,
So,
no,
he knows that world. He knows how to broker a deal.
Well, I think everybody knows call TMZ if you have something. I tell my kids, before you call 911, record it and call TMZ. You know, I'm joking.
You know, for the longest time, I actually taught at police conferences on this subject. And so what I did is I pulled the ratings, TV ratings during that week, and we might forget it now, but when that happened, this consumed all news back in 2007.
Well,
Tom knew he had gold. He knew it.
I wonder if he capitalized on that in any other way other than in the moment. Maybe he's thinking, I'm going to write a book or something. I'm sure he's thinking everything
I
like that.
I think he has a book, doesn't he?
He does.
He has some, Yeah, he has something. He has something out there.
So you drove across the desert, came to L.A.
Did you stop in Baker?
Wait.
Cab store.
We just looked at the temperature in
Did
Baker.
you see the thermometer? Yes.
What's that big gas station that has the candy and everything? Is that
And that's the world's largest thermometer in Baker.
okay?
Yes.
That's good.
And not rectal, by the way. It's just a.
Andy, aren't you? You get this
I
in
did it.
person. But most people have to pay for this.
Right? This is great.
I wish TMZ would have.
Kato, we love you. So drive to LA without a tape. Drive back to Las Vegas with the tape.
Yeah, and it was a digital recorder, and what we find out is not only did he record that, and that recording was over 6 hours long, right? So what this guy does is he knows something bad's going to happen in this room. But instead of calling the police, he goes and he buys himself a digital recorder, and he records everything leading up to it. He records the meetings with him and OJ at the Palms. He records, and before these guys arrive with the memorabilia, he takes this recording device and he sticks it up on top of the armoire above the TV. And here's the bitter pill. We had a search warrant for the room, but we weren't looking for that. We were looking for fingerprints, hair. We were looking for evidence. We weren't looking for a recording device. And that's where the bitter pill comes in, right? We wanted it, but dang it, we missed it.
You missed it in the armoire up top.
Yeah, and in fact, that recording for over 6 hours, that recorded all sorts of conversations in the room. So once we had the room secured and we had the search warrant, we worked out of that room. We formed a lot of opinions, a lot of thoughts. We had criminalistics processing the room that said some inappropriate things that all came to light on that recording device.
It's another surreal moment. And, you think of OJ in the 90s with everything he avoided here. Everything was circumstantial with the evidence for the most part. And here you have this recording of it actually happening. So not only do you know OJ's involved, your instincts tell you he's going to prison. Now there's proof.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, and Marsha Clark said something to us at the preliminary hearing. She came out for it, and she made this comment of how what she always wanted to show the jury and the public is that O.J. Simpson was like a light switch. He had the ability to go from this charismatic, likable guy to violent in a moment, right? And then also not only go to it, but turn it right back off. And we had a recording that showed that. In that recording, we had video of him coming into Palace Station, and you see him just, having a great time, shaking people's hands, waving at people, just, on top of the world. And then within a minute, he's screaming and yelling, directing these guys around, pushing them around, all inside the room. And then by the end of this recording, he's back to this guy who's just joking and laughing with these guys. All in that recording.
In the recording, is at any point the guys with the guns? Is there any time they say, "Give us the stuff, we'll use these guns"? Is there anything that was sort of damning to them?
like threats, like real hardcore threats.
real threats that would be
Will kill
threatened
you.
with life.
There were some indirect threats. They were telling them to move around, but they never said anything about shooting. We end up getting a second recording that referenced the guns.
Okay, I was going to say, so the guns are referenced, and someone goes, "Hey, they got guns on them," or something is said. There's guns.
Yeah, eventually. We didn't, not on that recording, on a separate recording that we get later.
Yeah.
Wow.
Hey, real quickly, kind of almost yes and no. Do you think he's a sociopath? The way he can flip that switch on and off?
I mean, I don't know what a sociopath is, but he's a psycho. So how about let's
Good
go with
enough
that?
for me. Good enough for me. Okay, so 2 big breaks have already happened. You get the tip from the ex-girlfriend. Now you have the audio recording. Do things start really escalating at this point? Where's OJ at this moment?
OJ's in custody at this time.
Okay.
So now we're ticking off the boxes. We're trying to figure out all the other players. We're trying to figure out what happened. The next big break comes when Michael McClinton turns himself into his attorney. Now, it's somewhat of a misnomer to say he turned himself in. We had his picture on national media. We had done a search warrant at his house. He turned himself in because he had to. Basically, his world was closing in. He couldn't do much without turning himself in.
Which player is he? Is he also a gun? He carried a gun?
He's the other gunman.
Okay.
And we already had the guns also. So we did a search warrant at his house. We found both guns. But he catches us off guard because when we go to his attorney's office to pick him up, he's got a recording too. So this guy, after the robbery happens, and he's one of the gunmen, he figures out pretty quickly that OJ's going to sell him down the river. That he's going to push him off. No paddles, no oars, no anything, right? So he says, I'm going to go get a recording, and I'm going to go to this after party with OJ at the Palms, back where they are.
After the robbery.
After the robbery. And at this after party, he starts getting OJ to talk about what had happened. And in that conversation, there's a conversation between Michael McClinton and OJ where OJ says, hey, they never saw that thing out in the hallway, did they? And Michael McClinton says no. And he says, okay, then nobody ever saw it, and nobody will ever say we had it, right? And we knew exactly they were talking about the guns because obviously there's not a video surveillance in the room, but there wasn't hallways. So the moment he knew we couldn't see it in the hallway, he thought he was good and no one would learn about the guns.
The fact that the guy had a recording to do that, it's just amazing what kind of people you're dealing with. Yeah. And you're thinking the same thing, like, oh, boy.
And same thing, that gunman didn't go to prison. He got probation.
Sure. Trade-offs, man. That's what it's all about. Yeah. You think about this cast of characters, which they were, but it almost worked to your advantage because they're thinking about themselves and they're thinking plea deals. They're thinking lesser charges. We're busted. We're going down. OJ's involved. This is heavy. So they're talking to their lawyers. They're thinking we'll plead down for information. I mean, a couple of them got off the hook entirely. You needed them. But everybody else is thinking lesser sentences. Isn't that correct?
Except for the one, that C.J. Stewart, that guy who decides, and I think it was probably his attorney that just wanted the attention from the case, but they didn't take a deal. They wanted to go to trial, and sure enough, he sat next to O.J. Simpson through that entire trial. And when it was convicted of both of them. So they both got that sentence at 15 to 33 years.
Oh, and is he still? He's out.
He's out. They actually won on appeal, and basically the appeal. And I'm going to basically give you the best summary I can. It's too toxic to sit next to O.J. Simpson in a trial. You were going to be found guilty, and so they basically said you need to be retried. At that time, they just said time served, and we'll let you go. He took the deal, and he was out.
And time served was
about 3 years. I think.
You know what? I will agree with that. I think that's probably the right move. I think they should add an extra year for being stupid and wanting to go to trial with O.J. Simpson. But I think you're right, man. You are lumped in with him, and you're going down just as hard.
Right.
Okay, so here's really what I find another really unbelievable part of this thing. O.J.'s arrested, and he has to go to jail. That's what happens when you get arrested. Maybe you get bailed out. That's the hope. You find the bail bondsman, you pay the money, you get out. When O.J. went to jail, this isn't like Joe Bag of Donuts going to jail. Describe what happened when O.J. was in jail.
He caused such a commotion in the jail.
Which is where?
It's in Vegas. In Vegas. So Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, it's a police department run by a sheriff, right? It's one of the largest ones in the nation, and there's only a few of them that are built like this. So I work for the police department that runs a jail. Most of the time, a county agency runs a jail, right? So we get to intimately know what's going on in the jail. He's causing such a commotion in the jail. And it's not just a commotion with the other inmates, right? It is a commotion with corrections officers. Corrections officers want autographs from him. They want to they want to see him. They want to talk to him. They want to come down and get whatever they can from him. And then you also deal with the same thing with the inmates. The inmates are trying the same stuff. They just want to see him, be near him. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I wasn't part of the call, but I was informed that, yes, the sheriff was making the call down to the courts to say he was in there on a no bail warrant. The sheriff wanted him to have bail so he could get out of jail. He was such a commotion and such a problem inside the jail, they wanted him out.
Yep. So he got bailed out. And then there's this whole other sidebar story with the bail bondsman, who was an interesting character himself. And OJ ended up staying at his house. OJ ended up having to go back to jail because of violating an order blatantly. There's just never anything that's just mundane at all. The circus comes out with everything that he's involved with.
Yeah, and you even think back to the preliminary hearing. So we get a preliminary hearing pretty quick. I think it happened in October, so pretty quick after the arrest. And at this preliminary hearing, the preliminary hearing is just enough to establish that we got enough to go to trial, right? So they're not going to do the whole full trial. But at this preliminary hearing, The judge holds it, and he has to open up a second courtroom because so many people are coming out for this. There's parades of people outside the courthouse. There's people running around in chicken suits in just a barrel with no clothes underneath it.
Right.
People holding up signs. You had various TV shows that had people coming out and interrupting.
It's Vegas. It's a show.
Oh yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, it was an absolute show that was going on for this preliminary hearing. So yeah, everybody came out for this.
Yeah. And he's held over for trial. The trial happens. And then the trial. And then another bad draw for OJ is the judge he got. Badass Nancy Glass, I call her, right? I mean, she was not playing around. She's not looking for the limelight. She's looking for justice. You mentioned the guns. The guns is the key thing throughout this. It changed the whole complexity of everything. So when he goes to trial, you mentioned that he had an opportunity for some pleas and he turned them down. What could he have been looking at?
The only plea I was aware of that happened before trial was 1 year. 1 year, he could have been done.
I mean, do you take that? If you're Vegas,
Yeah.
if you're in Vegas, Kato, do you take those odds? Do you take insurance when you're playing blackjack?
Yeah, I would take it. I would take it if I was OJ. Me,
Yeah,
I
of course.
think I would be like, boy, I'm in it.
Well, you wouldn't have done it. Yeah.
Yeah, I would never be in that situation. But I would think that there's for him not to think that there's going to be payback is insanity. It's got to be like he should. How he doesn't take the deal is just stupidity. It's ego.
Totally. And thinking I can work this jury. Now let's talk about the jury for a second, because that was such a big part of the LA situation, the jury, where the courthouse was, where the trial was, et cetera. Now in Las Vegas, you and I were talking about this. They wanted to make sure that they did not make any mistakes in picking this jury, and they went to great lengths to ensure that.
Yeah, in fact, so they weren't trying to pick winners or losers. What they were trying to do was avoid the crazies from coming in and disrupting, right? Because again, you go back to that preliminary hearing and you look at what showed up outside the courthouse, there was going to be people, you had free OJ 07 shirts, they were selling them like crazy, right?
Yeah.
So you wanted to protect the integrity of the justice system in the trial. The prosecutor gets approached by a gentleman who does basically jury selection or consults for him. Initially, the answer is no, but the guy comes out and makes a compelling pitch, and the pitch revolves around that of all you need is one person that comes in here and they basically lie to get on the jury, and that's a problem, right? And so they made such a compelling pitch that they end up contracting with this company to help try to get an unbiased, not even necessarily unbiased, because we weren't, again, it wasn't a matter of winners or losers. It was trying to keep the people who wanted to intentionally disrupt things out of the jury.
Yeah, it's like you go for jury duty, get interviewed. I just had it recently, and it's like the people in Vegas, the guy's going like, aren't you Carrot Top? Or something, but it's like so many characters, are right?
Right.
And I was just a few months ago on jury duty, and people were taking pictures and all that. So immediately I was like, okay, I think I'll be dismissed. So I was.
Well, they could learn from Los Angeles's mistakes and the experience that everybody had here. And Kato has a great story of how when he would walk into the courtroom during the OJ trial, he would see the jurors wave, make eye contact, and smile at OJ. He owned them. They were in his hands. So they wanted to make sure that didn't happen, keep the crazies out. How much of the trial were you there for, and did you testify?
I did. I ended up spending 4 days on the stand.
It's a long time.
Nevada has the exclusionary rule. So the moment the trial starts, all witnesses are out, and you're supposed to not supposed to track it, not supposed to know what's going on.
Sequestered from it.
Yeah, essentially you're supposed to be completely sterile when you come in to testify.
Yeah, good luck.
So essentially what I was there for a lot more of the days because we didn't know exactly when I was coming on. But I you did see him come in and out of the courthouse, and it was the same thing. He controlled the crowds. They brought him in a special entrance. He had crowds there just waving at him, and he did a good job. He'd ham it up good for him. He'd wave and smile, and he, again, his star power, even though he's done everything he's done, his star power was still pretty strong.
Well, yeah, and it's a line of the people that love him will always love him. People that hate him will always hate him. It's just like that, and he's fine. He's fine with both. He can, if someone's saying to his face, "You're a murderer" and all that, on video that's been seen, he doesn't. It's like Teflon to him. He doesn't care.
Well,
his ego is that strong. He's like, well, I don't care.
And I think even the people that hate him, you're still starstruck by him. Even if you believe he's guilty, there is still this factor of that's O.J. Simpson.
You can't help it. It's real energy.
Yeah.
We've all been around him a lot. It exists. And to act like you wouldn't be affected, you're naive, because it's just big stars are like that. I mean, if you run into Clooney, you run into people like it just happens.
Right.
I'm going to think out of the box here, and you guys tell me what you think of this. And Do you think he was there for 9 years, correct?
He was there 9 years, yeah.
Do you think 9 years with prison food, I don't know what medical attention you get, do you think that exacerbated if he had the prostate cancer? Do you think anything other, or do you think that's completely separate? I mean, that's a tough
It's a
one
great
to answer.
question.
And I don't know.
I mean,
if that,
all you can do is
you're in-
speculate, but it's
I
a
don't
good
know,
question.
I don't know what prison life is like and how healthy is there.
Regular checkups, things
yeah.
like that.
You know, I can't speak to that, but I can speak to. We did hear that his prison life wasn't too rough. It sounds like even where he was in prison, he was treated pretty well. You know, still kind of that star power, even at lunchtime. You know, we heard there were some scuffles initially when he got there over taking cuts in lines, but other than that, we heard that the 9 years on him wasn't that hard.
Oh my God, OJ got special treatment. I can't believe it.
Right?
You know, this hour has flown by. We're going to wrap it up here in just a second. So, Kato, start thinking about what you want to ask Andy here at the very end. I'm going to go to a couple things real quickly. Did Nancy Glass, the judge, did she overdo it? Was she in her legal boundaries to do this? Did you think she wanted to make up for what L.A. screwed up on?
No, I think that she did a very careful job of making sure she sentenced him within the guidelines of the statutes that were charged.
Okay, and my last thing is, you know, the one time I think reality hit OJ in the last 30 years is when he was being sentenced and he was breaking down. I didn't want to go there to commit a crime. That was the one moment where you actually feel that reality is setting in. And it was happening. It was on.
I got to back up. So even though she sentenced him within the guidelines, that still shocked every one of us. I would have never imagined a 15 to 33-year sentence.
Okay.
So within the law, so I want to make sure I answer that fairly. Okay. But that still shocked us.
And that's based on experience, based on crimes you've brought into the court system.
Absolutely.
And, whoa, if it took you aback.
Yeah.
Okay. But it wasn't illegal. It wasn't like she didn't like, this is what the guidelines are, and she stuck into the very, very max of those.
Yeah, I don't really have a last question. It's an opinion, and I think it's if you have any insight to know that after he was sentenced 15 to 33, did he ever say, can I go back to that 1 year? Does he ever say, like, listen, can I go back and get that plea deal?
If he did, that would have been done in private with his attorneys. But that's a done deal. You know, once you're convicted, you're convicted.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to leave everybody with one last thing.
It's amazing. It really, Andy, this is just amazing.
Kato, I'm going to tell you something that I think is going to shock you. I think it's going to shock 99% of the people that are watching right now. He serves his time. He gets out. There's 4 guys assigned to pick him up from jail as he's leaving. I'm getting chills even thinking about this story. It is the night of the shootings outside of the Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas at that Jason Aldean concert, October 1st, 2017. 4 people were going to go pick up OJ. 3 of them decided to stay at the concert. 1 went to pick up OJ, took him out of jail. The other 3 were all killed. Did you know that?
I had no idea.
Isn't that unbelievable? It just is another one of those things. Everything attached to the story of OJ is just so beyond reality. It's just hard to grasp.
I can't believe I've never heard that story is not a story that's out there.
Yeah.
That's really amazing.
When I told you, I think you were surprised too.
I was, yeah. That caught me off guard.
Anyway, Andy, did we miss anything? Anything huge?
I think you got most of it.
You know, I got to thank you. You don't talk to the media. Ladies and gentlemen, Andy is a star in a major documentary. He didn't even watch it. Okay, I find that unbelievable. Right now, you're working in Washington. You left Las Vegas after a while. Grew up in the L.A. area.
Yep.
Became a policeman out of the military, and now a little more peaceful job.
More
with the
peaceful
crimes
job.
you're dealing with.
Yeah, I retired out of Vegas. That's when I wrote the book. It was right when I was retiring, and then moved up to Washington, and now I'm doing the same thing up there.
Okay, give a really good plug for your book right now, because I want everybody to go out there and buy this book and support Andy. If you like this last hour with Kato and I, the book's phenomenal. So tell everybody where they can get it.
Yeah, you can get it on Amazon. The book's called Room 1203. Just all you do is put that in the search engine. It will be the only thing that pops up. And it actually gives you the actual story of what happened, regardless of what the media put out, regardless of what the perceptions are. And it'll walk you through everything from the moment we got the call all the way through the actual conviction. And it's where you'll get the full story.
Yeah.
Well, if it's as suspenseful as it wasn't, you have me on the show because, by the way, this is phenomenal. Yeah. And there's actually a horror film that comes out. John Cusack's in called Room 1204. It really is, and it's a bizarre film. But yours is Room 1203 to buy it.
1203.
And the only thing that upsets me is that Tom and I actually were discussing of driving you back to Vegas, but now you're in Washington. I wanted to show you Baker.
Is there an express lane all the way to Washington? We take you.
No.
And you go, forget that. He flew out here today. We're taking him back to the airport. Can't tell you how much I appreciate you being here, sharing your story. Phenomenal. Everybody, let's get some comments out there. Want to know what you think about Andy. I want to thank everybody who's fallen in love with this show. The numbers are phenomenal.
Yeah, thanks.
Kato's social media is exploding. Follow him every day. Follow me. It's in our link. All right, Andy, you have a safe flight back. Thanks for sharing everything. Kato, you keep being Kato.
I love it.
You do it very well.
Hey, thank you guys for having me on.
I checked. There was no gun, so we're safe.
Did you frisk him? Yeah. Thanks, everybody, for watching and listening. Every Thursday, a new episode of 1 Degree of Scandalous. I'm Tom Zenner. This is Kato Kaelin. And brace yourself. Wait till you see the guest we have in about the next 2 weeks. It's going to be unbelievable. Thanks for watching.